Hello fellow sim racers, and welcome to the third instalment of Chris Does iRacing. Thanks to everyone that commented on the format of the first two episodes. I'm glad these have been well received, and I'm keen to keep making incremental improvements to this series. Anyhow, this week I drove in the Ferrari GT3 challenge race on the Daytona road course, and I was pretty confident that this was going to be an absolute horror show. So stick around to find out whether my pessimism was justified. Before we take a look at the Daytona race, let's quickly recap what I've been up to so far. In my first race of the season at Alton Park, I managed to recover from an early spin to put the car on the podium, and then in last week's race at Zolder, I had the good fortune of being the lowest rated car in the top split, but still managed to qualify mid-pack. As the race progressed, I was fortunate enough to get caught up in other people's incidents. Twice. Still, with a damaged car, I managed to fend off pressure from behind and bring the car home in a disappointing 8th place. So that brings us to this week and the race at Daytona. The race ran in 2 splits and I was the number 2 car in the lower one. In qualifying, I had a momentary freeze as I was leaving the pit lane, which caused me to cross the white line and get a stop and go penalty for the trouble, effectively writing off my qualifying when I wasn't able to serve the penalty. So with no time set, I'd have to start at the back, in a pretty low rated split, which played into my fears that this race was going to be more twisted metal than iRacing. Once again, my start was a bit lackluster, something I really do need to work on, but having a bit of space down into turn 1 was always going to be the plan. Then the Marlboro liveried car executed a really quite impressive piece of opportunistic overtaking. Fair play to the guy, he saw a gap and in a split second went for it. I was focused on the slow cars in front, waiting for the inevitable pile-up, which thankfully was far enough to the left to not be an issue. The next few corners were an exercise in sizing up my opposition, and judging by some of the lines that were being taken, I was fairly certain that another incident would present itself sooner rather than later. And sooner it was, at turn 5 when the Marlboro liveried car decided to take the rallycross line and spear back across the track. I was able to slow and avoid contact, but the guy behind didn't get the memo for whatever reason. It felt like a heavy impact, but iRacing awarded 0 incident points for it, so not the end of the world. A traffic jam was forming by turn 6, so I held back and concentrated on maximising my exit speed, which gave me a decent run on the Marlboro car. I must admit, the weaving around on track didn't give me a great deal of confidence, but anyhow, I had the tow, so I wasn't exactly going to turn down the opportunity. The move was done, and rather than push my luck, I decided to slot in behind the magenta car for the bus stop. The guy braked pretty heavily on the apex, which I wasn't expecting, but I'd left enough space to be able to react. If there's one thing I've learned in these D-Class Ferrari races, is that driving at 90% when you're near other cars seems to get you out of trouble more often than not. So, by the end of lap 1, I'd made it up to 6th place and avoided the majority of the carnage. I took it easy into turn 1 again to avoid getting caught up in any repeat of the braking shenanigans from earlier, and that proved to be a good choice as the magenta and lime Ferraris got a bit too intimate on the inside. Counting my blessings, I got my head down and set my focus on the black and green car that was occupying the final podium place. Over the course of the next lap, I caught the Nvidia car and decided to set myself up for a pass on the run to the bus stop. But the guy ran a little wide into turn 5 and then just seemed to give up on the idea, which rather caught me by surprise. But not being one to look a gift horse in the mouth, I gladly took the place. With 5 seconds to make up to the guy in 2nd place, the next few laps would prove to be pretty uneventful. By lap 7, I'd got into the draft, and I was confident that with a good run through the bus stop, I'd be able to make a move coming out of the final turn. And that's how things played out. With a much more aggressive line through the curbs, I was able to shave off a few tenths and then take advantage of the slipstream. Job done. With only a handful of laps to go and a 7-second gap to the lead, it seemed pretty unlikely that I'd be able to improve on 2nd place. But I kept my head down, drove clean laps and managed to erode the gap by a couple of seconds by the time the checkered flag fell. All in all, a pretty decent race as far as I was concerned, and another podium to add to the tally. But I can't help but wonder if the chance of a win was destroyed by not being able to set a time in qualifying. That all being said, the goal for these races was really just to improve my safety rating and iRating, and finishing on the podium with 0 incident points definitely helps in that regard. Unlike the previous 2 races, the takeaways from Daytona are probably a little less obvious. Arguably, I was still a little passive into turn 1 and lost a place, but given the nature of the rest of lap 1, keeping the other cars at arm's length was probably the right call. For me, the bigger issue was that I was slower in the race than I was in practice. Now, I don't know if the hit I took on lap 1 impacted performance. The car did feel slightly off, but that may have just been my mind playing tricks on me. In practice, I was consistently able to run in the low 1-minute 44s, but in race pace I was 7 to 8 tenths slower, something to be looked at for next time anyhow. So that's about it for this week's Ferrari avoidance video. Next time, the Ferrari GT3 Challenge races at Imola, which I'm hoping will be a little bit more sane. If not, all of those gravel traps should help contain the madness. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you think the video will be interesting for others, then please consider sharing it. As always, thank you for donating your precious free time by watching. It is very much appreciated. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.